Hello and welcome to today's video. I still struggle with saying that. It's the hardest part. Okay, so today I really didn't have any topics in mind, so I just asked guidance to pick what would be the most helpful for the people who want to participate. So if you are new and you want to see what it's about before having my guidance work with yours, then just set your intention to watch only, and that's all it'll be. You'll just hear what I'm saying and you can decide for yourself. And then if you do want to participate, go through the video again with the intention to participate. And then my guidance will work with your guidance through the level of consciousness where we're all one. And it's really your guidance that's doing the healing for you. So the first thing that guidance suggested for us today was to recall energy. First I'm going to take a minute to let everybody settle and sort of make sure that we're prepared. I know I prepared myself before I started, but I want to ask that if you're participating, that you be working with your highest level of consciousness, the guidance that's highest level for you and maximum benefit. Sometimes that means clearing some programs for guidance, or sometimes it means getting different specialists in to work with us, upgrading the teams in a variety of ways. So working with our highest level of consciousness, that there are some grids around us in our workspace, so that we're only working with the beings that we choose to be working with. And also some help with electromagnetics in our space. And then also bringing in frequencies that will be helpful. And also, like, these videos are not really a super spectator sport. So when I do videos, when I like participate with somebody else's videos, I tend to use my tablet and even turn off the screen and just listen laying down often. But do whatever's comfortable. Like, you really don't need to see me if you don't want to. But yeah, so that, sorry, I just thought maybe one day it'll be nice to add some music to these, but that would be for a later day. Okay, so we're ready to go forward. So guidance, if you're participating, will start working on you while I'm talking about it. Sometimes we just have to talk about it a little bit to tap into the energy that guidance wants to shift for us. And so in recalling energy, um, the energies that they gave me specifically, and it might not be the only energies that they're recalling for you, are giving, freedom, gratitude, and forgiveness. So when I say recalling them, it's going to be a little different for everybody on this call, but like, it could be from people that you've given it to intentionally, given away your vitality or your abundance. An example, I used this in a prior video, so if you already heard it, forgive me, but like if a baby senses that its mother is depressed, it might give the mother its life force and its hope or good positive energies because it knows it needs its mother to stay alive. And so that can be a pattern that's established in infancy and then continues on into adulthood. We don't even have to be in the same room with people to be giving them our energy. That's a really extreme example, but I think sometimes those make it easier to see. Sometimes we believe that we need to give people our good because we hurt them in the past, whether it was in this life or another life. So there's like a million reasons that it could be. Those are just a couple to kind of get you thinking. And it could be to anyone. Sometimes it might be to a group. It might be to an aspect of our body. Earlier today, I was doing some work on myself and I did a vow and contract release with my emotional body, which I thought was just really interesting. So we give our energy away in all, like, so many possible ways. And then also sometimes we allow it to be taken, or also it can be like if we have a hole in our boundary, we might just be leaking. It might not be so intentional. So guidance wanted us to recall our energy. So we're setting our intention to recall all of our positive expression that we've left wherever with whoever, taking it back now. And so I think gratitude is fairly self-explanatory, as is Forgiveness, although I am going to say about forgiveness, a lot of people confuse forgiveness with like forgetting. Like you're supposed to forget that something happened if you forgave somebody. And I don't think that that's true. I think with forgiveness, we can maintain our awareness. Like sometimes people hurt us and it is not wise to continue to be around them. But the forgiveness is that we don't have to hold the energy of the injury anymore. And also we don't have to judge them anymore. And that might not sound all that appealing. I remember when I first heard a similar concept, I was like, really? That's what you got for me? Like, I don't have to judge them anymore. Um, it wasn't quite that exact scenario, but I remember I was just so far from like I guess inner peace at the time that it didn't even sound like really a reward. I'll be a little bit more specific. Specifically, I had quit drinking, and my mentor at the time had said something like, "You get to be comfortable in your own skin," and I was like, "Really? That's the payoff for not drinking?" Which gives you a good insight into where I came from. Like it's not all been easy, and I didn't grow up like meditating when I was 13 for hours a day. It came to me later in life because it had to. And yeah, and then I found myself learning how to work directly with spirit and and I am really grateful now to be able to be comfortable in my own skin or to be free of judging. Not that I'm free of it, like I still have to work on it, but when I am free of it, it is so wonderful to not be in that energy. Um, I'm just glancing at the notes I made. I'm not sure if we're going to talk more about judgment today, but I think we are. So I'm going to save that. But I wanted to clarify a little bit while we're talking about recalling, because this was the first energy that guidance gave me, and it is an energy, but I call it giving freedom. So it is like it sounds, and like that we're allowing others to be who they are. Um, but and this actually would tie right into the judgment. Um, for example, these days we could watch the news and get really um, sure that we're right about what we're watching because I mean, there are, some pretty horrible things. See, there's me judging. But, or is it awareness? I don't know. I talked about that in a previous video. What do we align with, the awareness or the judgment? Um, but clearly, there's wars and there's really dangerous things happening to people, and the pollution is kind of insane. So while there are things that I think we are all wanting to change, what is the energy that we hold on those things? So, and in this particular instance of giving freedom, say we watch people who are creating the violence or the poison in our environment. Can we give them freedom to have their own spiritual path and awakening? I know that's a lot easier said than done, and might even feel some resistance to would we want to do that, because sometimes there are times that we need to actually go make some change, like create some policy change or whatever needs to happen to have people being kinder to each other and safer and healthier. um, but I am putting this out there that all of those things are going to be facilitated by us being in an energy of positive expression with what we want to create, as opposed to what we hate. I'm going to say hate. I know we're not supposed to hate. I don't love it when I see hate in myself, but I have found that I have to acknowledge it when I do see it to be able to transform it. I think the current world circumstances are bringing everything to the surface that's not aligned with love and freedom. And to be able to transform it, we do have to acknowledge that it's there. And often it's very simple to transform once we do. It's the running from it that makes it stay. Um, and then in terms of changing the outer world, we have so much power to do that by working on our own self and our own condition, i.e., giving freedom, because that's the words that guidance gave me first thing out of the gate today. It may be more helpful to look at it from a sense of like removing ourselves from conflict. Like, take a scenario where you're really sure you're right. There probably are a lot. Um, but if we're fighting to be right, we are creating conflict. and fight. And fight is like a level ultimately of violence. So if we want to unmake violence in the world, we can do a lot by simply unmaking conflict in ourselves, or maybe violence. Maybe doing your work on yourself, you feel violence come up. I don't love admitting that either, but I have. And so unmaking the frequency from my own energy system does actually help the world, because we are all connected. We are all one at the highest level of consciousness. So in giving freedom, I challenge you to really kind of look at where you're not, especially when it feels like you're right. And I'm not saying you're not right, but what's the energy behind the being right? Kind of back to, is it awareness or is it judgment? Which feels better? Because I think when I feel into it, one feels like solution and one feels like what I need to overcome. So, and also keeping in mind that these are frequencies. So what we're doing right now with guidance is we are recalling the frequency of giving freedom. There may be some people listening right now who have zero giving freedom frequency in their fields. Well, it makes it really hard to then, well, for one thing, even believe it exists if you don't have any in your fields. It also makes it, we don't attract as much if we don't have it. And I want freedom too. I definitely want freedom. So if that's another thing we can do, is we can look at in our life what we're not feeling like we're receiving, and we can ask our guidance and set our intention to draw in that frequency. And then it's kind of one of those weird magnetism things. When we have more of it in our field, we attract more. So giving freedom, gratitude, and forgiveness were the first things guidance wanted us to recall. Um, I've I think I already talked about, there were sort of two sub-subjects on that. One was taking ownership of our role in creation, which I just sort of talked about with the violence. Like if I'm the energy that I have about being right, is it conflict or is it peace and finding a solution? Uh, Thought is very creative. Some of you might have heard of thought forms. Like if there's enough thought that goes into something, it will actually create a thought form that has a consciousness. Like one of the for example, Jesus, and probably all religious figures. Um, you get millions of people thinking what they think that person or being is, and maybe it's not actually what that person or being is, but so many people believe it, there becomes a thought form. And this thought form has consciousness that will interact with people. So people will be very sure that they're involved, that they're working with Jesus. And they're working with something that is giving them feedback. But it's not always Jesus, especially if it's not based in love, then it's definitely not Jesus. And I don't know that all of the beings of all of the religions. So I, don't want to make claims that like, if it's not love, it's no, I just don't even know. I do know that there are thought forms, and whether it's something that millions of people are pumping their thought into, like religious figures, or our personal beliefs about who we are, what we deserve in life, what we believe we deserve, who I think my neighbors are from my house. I encourage you that if any of that is negative, to be willing to look at it as a belief system that may not be correct. Or perhaps it is correct now, but if we let go of our attachment to the belief, it could shift. Maybe that neighbor that is kind of a jerk, if I stop putting energy into believing that they're a jerk, maybe that relationship will shift. Maybe they won't have the projection that I'm putting on them, causing them to be more of a jerk than they would naturally be. So especially at this time on the planet, as we're ascending and moving away from everything like the way it always was before, it's really a time to start being very mindful about our thoughts. Every single thought. I know it's a lot, but that's what I think we're all being called to do right now, is to change the world we live in by changing our consciousness. And it's a big ask because, especially living in a world where we've seen so much, well, it's just been really hard for a lot of people to live for like ever, certainly in most of our lifetimes. And so to even believe that we can have this new earth, that people are using that term, the new earth, or ascension, moving into higher consciousness, can be really challenging, because we don't, it's hard to imagine something you've never seen before. But I do believe that that's where we're going, and and that we're going to help create it by shifting our own consciousness, and that we can do it with more ease and grace by working on our own consciousness. Okay, and then yeah, I touched on that already, that we send energy when we think about people and things. We do send energy. And um, so being really mindful of what we're creating in the world, even with every thought that we have. um, okay, so now we're going to change some response patterns from separation to self-consciousness. When I say response patterns, I'm talking like kind of like the wiring of our body, that gets created. Sometimes we create response patterns because of a trauma, um, or repeated trauma or beliefs. Um, so guidance is gonna re-educate our multi-dimensional self right now, which includes like every level and layer of consciousness that you can think of, the various structural layers of the spiritual body. If you're familiar with the mental, emotional body, the mental body, the emotional body, astral body, all of it. So that's why it's really helpful to have guidance re-educate it, because it's not just like us going to school. It's like the wiring, the patterns, like our nervous system, like we're not really conscious all the time about what our nervous system is doing, but it's doing a lot. And then when you take that and you look at, we have a physical nervous system that we're aware of and we barely understand at all. Well, we also have like some version of that in like so many layers of our body. Like when we say emotional body, mental body, physical body, we've got the meridian system, we've got the light body, which is a whole bunch of circuits and stuff. And so having the highest level of consciousness through spirit be able to re-educate our bodies can be really, really life-changing. When we say separation to self-confidence, separation, it can be so many things, but for today, the nudge that I got was to talk about separation from our own resources. Certainly it can be separation, feeling separated from each other, separated from source, separated from nature, but separation from our own resources. Like in this process of ascension, we are returning to a condition where we have access to our divine resources. Things that have been so uncommon in life up to this point, we might consider them miracles, are really kind of like normal, or would be normal if we had access to like all of our resources. For example, our meridian flows, ideally our meridians would be, and not just our meridians, like our entire energy systems would be drawing in equal energy from below us through earth. I say below because there's literally our root chakra is at the base of our spine, and then above us the spiritual energy coming in through the crown, constant flow both directions, making a toroidal shape. A toroid looks like a donut, if you don't know that. So we're sort of like the middle of the donut, with just constant energy flow of resources. Our meridians, for example, liver would be drawing in happiness and moving out any anger. The liver processes anger and also would draw in happiness, but when it gets out of balance, we can tip towards anger real hurry, and then all of a sudden we're not releasing anger, and then it's like hoses that got a kink in them, or a sink drain that's got a clog. Like the energy is not moving, we're not bringing in the happiness, we're not letting go of the anger, and it goes on and on. So those are just even some of the more, I would say, physical levels of our resources through our spiritual anatomy. One of the things that guidance wanted me to talk about today was universal organs. If you practice Qigong, or I'm not familiar with Tai Chi, but I feel like they're pretty similar. You might have heard of the universal organ, and you can connect your energy to, I don't want to say this wrong, so I'm going to try to say not a lot about it, but there is like a universal consciousness for an optimal liver. And so ideally we're connected to all of these things. Like I just described our flows like that, but there's also like so much grid work. I'll say grid work, like lines of light between like I almost want to say like infinite amounts of things that we connect to, be it each other. If we had like positive interactions, sometimes we get the courting and attachments, which are codependent, and that's discordant energy. But there are also like positive interactions energetically between humans and nature, between humans and the planet, between humans and every planet and every star that's in the sky. And then our organs. And I even just had this today, like I've had my gallbladder removed. So sometimes I get some challenges in the digestive tract. And I was driving, it was actually yesterday, I was driving and I was like, oh, this is not good. Like, and then I was like, oh, okay, can I make sure I'm connected to the universal digestive organs? Oh, all of my organs connected to the universal organs. And I had just had a reminder because I had been in a group session with my teacher, and I kind of forgot about universal organs. I haven't done a lot of qigong practice lately, but oh my gosh, it helped immediately. And I say it helped immediately, but I when I say I haven't done a lot of qigong practice lately, I've done a lot of qigong practice over many years. So my not a lot lately is still kind of working with it. And I only say that because I don't want you to try it and not have like instant massive results and go, oh, this doesn't work. There is sort of an activation process, much like if you go to the gym. You don't go from being completely sedentary and overweight to being fit and lifting big, huge weights in like a day. It takes time. And our energy system also takes time to be able to, in some cases, build connections, and in other cases, strengthen connections. Today, we're working on changing response patterns, which is working with some of these. We're working with meridians and the light body and the nervous system on all different levels. When I say all different levels, it's because we have a nervous system that's in the mental body. We have a emotional body and nervous system. We have a physical body and nervous system, an etheric body nervous system. Which is why it's just so great to be able to go to guidance. Like, who could ever know all these things or think to ask all these things? Sometimes it is really helpful to talk about it because we might be on some level blocking that flow intentionally. But often we can talk about one or two things and then guidance can do like thousands of things to help us. So yes, that is that. And then, okay, so we're getting kind of ready to wind up now. Guidance is going to recalibrate our brain waves. If recalibrate, I that not everybody knows what that means, and it's a challenging question to answer. What I will tell you is when I was a photographer, I would calibrate my screen on my computer so that when I printed, it was the same colors I was looking at on my computer. And before I did that, it was, I forget honestly if it made my screen, I think it made my screen look a lot more yellow. It had looked a lot more blue before. So it's like adjustments. And we're calibrating to the divine blueprint. You know, we just like a screen monitor, like if you're a photographer, you probably want to do that calibration, I think like every 6 months or something. And living life can kind of take us off our calibration with the divine design. So recalibrating brainwaves is guidance is going through all the brainwaves and calibrating them to the divine frequencies. And I'm just going to let guidance do that for a minute. Okay, and then lastly, we're just going to re-educate every aspect of you on every level. And this could be soul, organs, emotional body, mental body, spiritual bodies, levels of consciousness that are more involved with spirit right now than they are with our human lives. Every level. Okay, and then I'm going to check that we're all ready for integration. And this also might be sort of a cleanup of, like I said, once we talk about a few things, suddenly guidance can go in and do a bunch of other things. They maybe doing a bunch of etheric surgery right now, which could be removing a cording and attachments. I feel like there's a lot of liver work getting done right now. Actually, I'm just going to put my hand on my liver and use my body as a surrogate for you. Yeah. Okay. So I talked about recalling energy, but also guidance is it's probably a little different for everybody listening, but doing a lot of like removing what's not ours right now from the liver. We can take on livers. I've taken them on for my ancestral lineage. There was a time when I was first starting to work with the etheric organs. I felt like I just constantly was doing vow and contract release and removing livers that I had taken on from my ancestral line, the one that had all the alcoholism. So, and like I said, liver tips to anger when it's out of balance. It was not fun. It wasn't ever fun before that. Doing the work was actually a lot more fun than living with the condition before I understood it was. Um, but sometimes when it's on its way out, you might feel it a little bit. So if you feel a little bit angry, things you can do to help yourself are things like breathing in happiness, breathing in forgiveness, or any virtue that sounds nice, self-care, self-love. Going for a walk really helps process emotions because the sacroiliac joint is where the emotional center of the body is. So the walking just physically gets that area moving. Okay. Oh, guidance is still working on that. Okay. So that's enough that we can move on now. We're going to re-educate the system again. And check that we're ready for integration. You might find yourself doing some physical releasing today, so just be extra mindful of self-care, drink lots of water, maybe get some extra rest. We're working specifically with the liver, so maybe don't drink alcohol for a day or two. If you do, be really mindful that you might get drunk more, well, like on a teaspoon, as opposed to whatever you would normally drink. Okay, so that's it for today. Let's see. Yeah, I think sometimes guidance will continue to work on us after we finish our session, but I'm getting that today they're done. Um, if you have any questions, put them in, message me on the Embodied Spirit Life Instagram, and I would be happy to talk about things in future videos. I think that's it for today. So I hope that you feel some freedom. Often giving freedom is how we end up feeling freedom too. It's funny, we're coming back to that giving freedom. I was thinking of it just now, freedom from the stuff that we carry in our liver, because that can be really heavy stuff. So I hope that you enjoyed this and feel really good afterwards, and I will see you next week.